It is now 10 a.m., September 10th, here, and we are here at the Senate chamber of the Honorable Jesus B. Mofnas Memorial Building. And I now call this Fiscal Affairs Committee meeting to order. To introduce the members present here with us this morning, to my far left, we have Senator Carl King Neighbor. To his right, Senator Dennis Mendiola. To his right, Senator Paul Manglonia. To my far right, we have Senator Selena Vivalta. And Senator Karina Magosnia, the Vice Chair, will be joining us shortly. I am Donald Malonia, Chair for this committee, and with 5 members currently present, we have the quorum to proceed. And with that, just introduce staff assisting the committee. We have our Sergeant at Arms, Ben Terlahi, Legal Counsel, Joe Bermudez, Fiscal Analyst, Dave Demapon, Senior Legislative Aide, Jolene Dueña Stagable, and our IT Manager, Jonathan Diaz. Now, with that, members, can I get a motion for the adoption of today's agenda?
So moved.
A motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries, and the agenda is hereby adopted. At this time, we move on to public comments, and I open the floor to any member of the public who wishes to make comments today. Please state your name and the entity you may be representing, and I'll allot 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of this Fiscal Affairs Committee. Thank you for the record, my name is Teresita Santos of DPL. Thank you for placing Senate Bill 23-48 as one of the bills for today's discussion and consideration. As all of you may be aware, Public Law 15-2 requires DPL's comprehensive land use plan to be updated or reviewed every 5 years. It's been due since January of this year. However, DPL has not moved forward with updating such a comprehensive land use plan due to the lack of the necessary funding. And so with that, DPL strongly supports and commends the author of Senate Bill 23-48 for amending Public Law 15-2, requiring updating or reviewing the comprehensive land use plan subject to funding availability. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and DPL again highly solicit the support of the members of this committee and passing this particular legislation.
Thank you, Secretary and former Senator Santos. We're
Good
still
morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Patricia Rossa. I'm the director for the Planning Division of the Department of Public Lands, the division that is tasked to pursue the land use plan. In the previous years, it had cost us, the original land use plan since I came in, cost us just under $900,000. We're requesting for, well, give or take approximately $275,000, thinking that it'll be a lot lower because it's going to be just an updated one. Hopefully it's enough. I am in full support of the Bill 23-48 to, right now it's outright every 5 years. And if it could be amended to or pass upon availability of funds, that will work better with us. Everybody knows, budget is not coming in as we had anticipated, and hopefully this will solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossa. Floor is still open, but it looks like there's no one else, and so at this time, we'll close the public comment portion of the agenda. Um, we now move down to the next item on the agenda. Um, Before we go in recess, seeing as how we have two comments that we received in regards to this first bill that we have under old business, do we want to dispose of that right now? Any concerns regarding 2348? I recognize Senator Paul.
Basically, the amendment is to accommodate the lack of funding to do the land use plan. Is that the reason for this language, so that they can get out of that requirement? Basically, that's the intent of this legislation. Then,
Recognize Senator Mendiola.
To answer that question, I think that's the intent, is pretty much to just allow them flexibility and not be mandated to the every 5 year build a comprehensive land use plan. So with this, the actual just allowing them on this bill is just to shall be based on the availability of funds, pretty much. So because they don't have any funding, they're requesting to allow this language in this bill to change the Public Law 15-2.
yeah, so I guess thank you, Senator. So I guess my concern is, since it's every 5 years, they can automatically drag it and not do it for the next 5 years. So I'm thinking maybe we should come up with a language that says the promulgation of the comprehensive land use plan shall be based on the availability of funding. But if what we hear from the secretary is 250,000, I think this plan is very critical. We don't want them to keep dragging it and then make it 10 years to not do it. So we don't want to open a crack that allow them to go indefinitely. So I'm going to recommend that we put a language here to say that shall be based on the availability of funds, but not to exceed 7 years of no plan. At least give them a year or two. But I don't know how to put that down now. But that's my understanding, that they can delay it indefinitely, even 15 years for that matter. And I don't think that we want to see that, right? And we want to have a plan. And of course, if it's only a couple 100,000, I think we should have at least give them a time frame that shall be based on the availability of funds, but not to exceed 7 years without any plan. 7 or 8 years. That's kind of my recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Paul. We have Senator Babata, followed by Senator Mendiola.
Thank you, Chairman. I highly oppose this bill. Include the language that the promulgation of this land use plan shall be based on the availability of funds, for the same reason that Senator Paul has mentioned. But also, the law requires them to update it every 5 years. Zadalay za tisina ne maplaneya 5 años con tempo. That's a long time to come up with this plan, and I think that's a reasonable time for them to come up with a land use plan. I also oppose it to be provided based on the availability of funds. A land use plan is a fundamental document that guides the development of our land uses here. If we do not, if we include this language that they don't have to, unless they have money, then we may as well abolish zoning. If there is no land use plan, what exactly are we zoning here in Saipan? And this could possibly lead to short-term priorities for the funding that they could be saving up for in this 5 years to come up with this plan. So I recommend that we file this bill, actually. I yield for now.
Thank you, Senator Peralta. I recognize Senator Mendiola.
So I think, to be clear, and again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I agree with Senator Paul. Now, maybe we should put a provision where we end this maybe extend it to 7 years, only for now, because as they stated on their public comment that it is due this year, January. So that means that they are already not in compliance. So they're soliciting our help to kind of give them that flexibility, I guess, for the meantime. So, and again, this is up to the committee, but I just want to put it out there that per the conversation of, or their public comment, that they're already in delinquency with this, and we're about to end the fiscal year. And I'm assuming that they do not have the funding to actually move forward with this comprehensive land, this plan. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mendiola. Council?
It sounds like they say that they need $275,000. So can we include it in their budget
Yeah.
and just reserve that money strictly for the land use plan in their budget? Because I saw the concurrent resolution, there's a $1 million wash in there. And to me, it sounds like every year there's always extra money with them. They're not revealing everything that they're
No,
supposed
no.
to be revealing. So
You're right. They never budgeted anyway. And so that's the problem. They haven't included in their budget, even for this year, even this fiscal year.
right, so I'm thinking, why don't we include the
Yeah,
275 in the budget? And we specifically in the one of the.
It's in there.
It's in there?
The funding that they're requesting includes the comprehensive land use plan for the next fiscal year.
So
But I think the legislation is for future years. If there's no money, then they don't have to do it. It's basically what it's trying to say, right?
So, Mr. Chair, maybe not just allowing this till next fiscal year, pretty much. You can just put in a sunset provision where just for now, because they are already exceeding the timeline that they need this, and it's included in the next fiscal budget, which is going to be October. So I'm not sure if they're going to be in violation if they don't accomplish this land plan by this year, or I don't know what's there.
Sorry, before I recognize anyone else for the first round, Senator King Neighbors.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to page 2, line 1. It doesn't amend anything regarding the time frame for the land use plan to be furnished to the government or to the legislature, or to be provided online for everybody's perusal and understanding. So I'm not really understanding where we're getting the 7-year or a perpetual indefinite timeline for them to do a land use plan, because the only thing that's being changed is as the funding is made available. There's nothing being changed to the time set parameter for the land use plan to be given.
Thank you,
I-
Senator King Neighbor.
if I may, Chairman,
Recognize.
I think if we are to amend this bill, that needs to be addressed. What Senator Carl Neighbors has mentioned, that the bill still says shall be updated every 5 years. However, in subsequent sentence, it says the promulgations of the land use plan shall be based on the availability of funds. And I think those are two conflicting, if not statements that are not in agreement, because how can you have a 5-year updated land use plan if you don't have the money to do it? So if we are to amend this bill, I think that needs to be addressed. Also, even though the bill states that it shall be updated every 5 years, however, it's based on the availability of funds, it doesn't motivate DPL to actually complete this in 5 years, the way I'm reading it. And also, land use plans are made for the benefit of the public too. And so, to accommodate population growth or decreases, that's what land use plans are all about, to determine how best to use our limited resources. And if we don't have a land use plan because they don't have money, we're never going to progress. We're going to, with developments on this island, we're just going to continue to build hotels wherever they want. So I think it's a very fundamental document that needs to be planned and executed, frankly. I yield.
Thank you. I think to address this, we just have to include language where it must be, I don't know, maybe budgeted every fifth year or something like that. It must be included within their budget submission at the after every fifth year. You know, if the current one is due by January, they should have budgeted this in the current year even to focus on that project. But instead, in the current fiscal year, they focused on filling up, I think, if I'm not mistaken, over 20 FTEs. And so it's all about priority. It's all about we don't have to tell them to reserve money. I mean, they get their money as a transfer out, or it doesn't even come in beforehand. But in any case, for fiscal year 25, the land use plan is included in their budget submission, as they stated during the budget hearing. Some of the costs that they are proposing is to include is set aside for the comprehensive land use plan. So moving forward, if we were to address this bill moving forward, rather than maybe propose that it'll be done based on availability of funds, you can maybe propose to change that to shall be included within their budget submission every fifth year after the date this becomes effective or something like that. I don't know. That's just my proposal. Recognize the author of the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to thank you for including this proposed legislation on today's agenda. I was listening on the way here, and to give some context, I hear what both Senator Paul and Selena are saying, and I take that to heart. I agree that the language is pretty vague in there with regards to the expiration of the date, right? So it's 5 years, but subject to the availability of funds. And I agree with Senator Paul that we should include language in there that kind of gives them a timeline, because it is also very dangerous not to establish timelines that could take 10 years or 15 years, and we don't want that. So I am definitely in support of what Senator Paul is proposing. But just a little backstory to how this legislation came about. So I had some conversations with the Secretary of DPL, and because they were nearing expiration, the deadline for the comprehensive use plan, this was kind of one of the mechanisms to allow them the flexibility to extend the deadline because of the lack of funds. Chair, I would like to let you know that we did have that conversation about setting aside monies every year, knowing that this is a 5-year plan, that they should be able to budget accordingly, so that when that year 5 comes, we are not in this predicament again. And so really the intent of this legislation was to allow them the flexibility for this year's requirement. But hearing the arguments today, I agree that we should establish a timeline, maybe do a sunset provision, if I may recommend, for this particular year, just to allow them that flexibility, right? For this fiscal year, since they already budgeted it in 2025, but going forward, right, that this is something that we need to mandate them to budget it, include it in their annual budget, so that we can address this type of issues moving forward. And so with that, if that's something that the committee is willing to consider, maybe for this particular year, where I know they're already non-compliant because it was due in January. So maybe we can give them the flexibility and do a sunset provision, right, to give them until next year, since they included it in their FY25 budget. But after that they just really have to set aside monies every year until year 5, so that they can take care of this very important planning, as Senator Babauta has mentioned. So if that's something that the committee will be willing to consider, I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice. Sorry, Senator Mendiola. Council, you had something you want to
I just
chime
wanna
in on?
understand, okay. So January of 2024, it was due in 2024, okay. So so the next updating will be 2029. And it's included in the budget for FY 2025. So they want to go back and update
Change the
it for
timeline.
20
Change the start of the new timeline, I guess.
Just trying to understand, so we can But it's
Makes sense.
actually,
Yeah.
it's not a promulgation of the comprehensive, it's a updating of it, right?
Yes,
It's
it's an update,
updating.
because it's already been established, right? It's just something
Right.
that they have
So
to
it's
maintain
just
every 5
updating every
years.
5 years.
Which, again, to Senator Rabauta's point, this is something that could have been planned way ahead of time. 5 years is a lot of time, but, to be fair to the current secretary, she came in and absorbed, whatever that was left behind, not to point fingers, but we just need to address what the issues are on the table and move forward, right? And that didn't give them enough time, according to DPL, ample time to pursue this mandate. So,
Thank you. Senator Mendiola, recognize.
So maybe the course of action is not to allow for or not to include the language upon the availability of funds, and rather just change it to extend or have them allow them the flexibility to next fiscal year instead of this fiscal year, January. If the issue is, because again, on the bill it says updating every 5 years. So in essence, this is saying that we already have the information. We just need to pay somebody to actually go out and update this. So maybe extending it to next year is probably the course of action that'll help flexibility or give DPL flexibility to next fiscal year. And it's to Senator Babauta's point, I believe everybody agrees that we should not leave that upon the availability of funds, because they can always use that every 5 years and just say, hey, we don't have funds, we don't have funds, we don't have funds. So I agree. But because we've passed their timeline already, I think this is intended to just allow them some flexibility to push it to next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carl.
So I guess my suggestion would be that I would like to ask some questions of DPL with regards to how their SOP has been regarding this land use plan, and so they need an extension. What really is the extension mean, and how are we going to adjust for it moving forward? I think there's a lot of questions that are hanging that a lot of us have. We're in support. Obviously, we're already late, so to kind of we're in September. It was due in January. I think it's something that we can bring back with DPL and on a subsequent meeting, and answer and vet out everything, so we can kind of whatever amendments, whatever suggestions, we can understand their process and shape this legislation to fit.
Thank you, Senator King Neighbors. Dave, did you want to add something?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to share with the members that we have a mechanism here in the financial statements that we could plan a cash flow needs for this issue that we're facing right now. For example, when you look at the fund balance, of the balance sheet of the Chiang Mai government, in particular MPOT and DPL, we see there are 5 categories there. One is restricted fund balance, non-spent book fund balance, committed fund balance, assigned fund balance, and unassigned fund balance. Under the committed fund balance, we can have a language there that we will reserve certain amount of money for the next 5 years, whatever that amount of money is. For example, right now you're looking at 275,000, so we amortize that by 5 years,
50,000.
about 50,000 a year. So in the provision that we will establish is that every year this enabling legislation will reserve certain amount of money, which is approximately 5 million. That by the time 5 years come, no, that 50,000 will accumulate up to 275,000. Just want to share
Yeah,
that.
thank you, Dave. Council, I mean, I don't think we can do that here. It's kind of like appropriating every year 50,000, setting aside. But we can get clarification. Floor.
Yes, and I just wanted to add to that. That's a great idea, but if we can't do it from our end, again, this we would include in the recommended amendment that would require DPL to set aside every year whatever that amount is, right? Because we have to be mindful that it's not going to be 275 for the next 50 years. That the prices continue to go up, so we don't want to limit them to just 50,000 a year, knowing that with inflation and everything else, we need to give them some flexibility for those fluctuations. But again, going back to the proposed or the recommended proposal that I'm more than happy to strike out the language of subject to the availability of funds, and then really just to enable them to get caught up or comply with this year's mandate, and then going forward would require them to include it in their budget, whatever that amount is. We'll kind of give them that discretion, because I wouldn't know how much something like that would cost, but just some flexibility for this year's requirement, and then moving forward, they would have to budget it every year.
Okay, so maybe it's something that we can throw back to them and get a final date as to how long it'll take to complete the first or this previous 5 years, so that we can include that, and that will, I guess, start the new clock moving forward, and that included in their budget submission is a proposed annual fee that they can set aside.
And I recommend, Mr. Chairman, just put a language in there that says the legislature shall provide funding every 5 years, 1 year before the due date for the comprehensive land use plan, provided that the next updated due date is January 2026, right? Because 2025 is just around the corner, and then just restart it, provided that the next updated plan will be due on January 1st, 2026. And then that should take care of everything, right? That every 5 years, 1 year before, the legislature shall provide, provided that the next updated report will be due on January 1st, 2026. That should address the concern. I so move.
But going forward, though, like, we need to. I just want to make sure that they are also taking responsibility for future.
Yeah, I think his recommendation is 1 year before the deadline, the legislature shall provide the funding to DPL.
Okay.
Why the legislature? Why
Yeah,
not-
because
why not have DPO
Be the-
included
in their budget, yeah.
Well, it will force them to put it, because the legislature is going to say we're going to put it.
Or DPL shall report on the 4th year
what
to the
cost
legislature
is,
the
so that
cost for future.
Okay. I mean, I'm open to that consideration. I'm just worried that if we lump everything into 1 year prior, that might be a little bit of a burden to the whatever amounts we have to appropriate. So that's why I was trying to break it down into 5 years, so it's a lot more doable, right? When you're setting aside money every year instead of one-time appropriation the year before. But I'm open to any suggestion, whatever the committee supports. Thank you.
Before we entertain your motion, Senator Paul, Senator Villalta, you want to add something?
Thank you, Chairman. DPL, my biggest concern is that DPL has not been transparent with their funding. MPLT has taken them to court because they haven't remitted the excess amounts. They continue to be to not be transparent with their bank accounts. And as far as I know, there are at least two bank accounts that the government doesn't see. And an MPLT, like I said, has taken them to court for not remitting the excess as required by the Constitution. And this was proven when they started giving out scholarships, out of DPL, educational scholarships, which is not a mandate of theirs. Secondly, the bill doesn't have any provision for homestead use. There are over 3,000 applicants still waiting. There's a moratorium. Nobody can apply at this point. Um, to the author's comment that the secretary unfortunately didn't have time. Was it even a priority when she came in, knowing this deadline was coming up, and the legislature cannot continue to bend backwards to departments who um, don't do their mandates? We cannot continue this. How can we hold them accountable if we're going to give them another 5 years? This is a very critical document. Secondly, the set aside, I believe, and council can correct me, is unconstitutional. The constitutional provision requires DPL to remit any excess aside from their administrative or operational costs to MPLT. So I think a set aside every year is unconstitutional. And council, can you chime in on that?
That would definitely raise an issue, but if we stick to the budgeting, if they include it in their budget as part of their program uh, operational cost line, I think that would be okay. But to set it aside every year, a certain amount, I mean, MPLT may raise an issue. But if it's included in the budget, I think there's no issue at all. But that has to be like 1 year
Every year.
prior.
No, or every year, if you're talking
Well-
about like the set aside,
Yeah.
they have to perform continuous work on that each year.
But I don't think the issue here is to push it for another 5 years. I think the issue here is to just try and allow them till next year or to promulgate this comprehensive plan, just because they're not in compliance as of this year, which is the due date is January.
So are they saying that give us an extension to January 2025 to do
Yeah.
the
Because they're
Update?
getting funding now in their proposal.
And maybe that's to Senator Carl's point. Maybe that's something that we need to do, is just bring him in there and ask all these questions and actually get a clarification on what's the intent, where they at, if there's even one, are they working on it, or are we just saying I missed the deadline, I'm not gonna do it. So this is the questions that we need to ask.
Question. Is it a regulation or
statute,
a statute?
but there's no penalty, or is there a penalty? Right.
And that's what I'm saying. These are the questions.
So actually, the wording on the bill is already good. It says every 5 years it should be updated. So if we do an amendment, like I was recommending to amend your amendment, then it's going to further add that 1 year before the due date, you better request so that they can approve. So it's like it's already strong right there. They fell. They violated the law. But I guess to further give them a warning is to say that 1 year before you have to make a request. But my question to the attorney is this expenditure should not be questioned by MPLT, right? Because it's an appropriate expenditure by DPL. Right. And also further to answer Senator Selena's concern, it does identify in the plan that they should identify and reserve suitable lands for homesteads. So this also helps the legislature to review their plan on every 5 years as far as homestead. So actually, the amendment, I mean, the bill is all there. It's just the amendment by Senator Corina is just to recognize that they didn't do it this year because of funding. But I think if we put a language that says 1 year before you have to request for funding, and that this year, and provided that this year we move the date to be so that the plan be completed on year January 26. No, so that's all. And thank you.
Senator Barbosa.
Thank you, Chairman. So if we give them till January of 2025, it's
26.
26. Okay, and I think it's appropriate to call them in. Can they finish it in that time frame? And if so, will the 5-year counting based on the statute be after 2026 then? A new reset of a deadline?
Yes, that would
Or
be
does it begin,
that's the recommendation by
it will
Senator Paul.
reset this? I
I
still
think
feel
instead of
that-
asking it for year 4, by year 4, they should do a yearly
I mean,
review and then budget for that yearly, so that by year 5,
if they didn't meet the January 2024 deadline, and that was 5 years after the last one, we're now trusting or entrusting them to complete it in 1 year. So can they complete it? They didn't do it the last 5 years.
Vice Chair.
That's a very good question, Senator. I think it would be prudent then to invite DPL here so that we can address those concerns and truly know how long it would take them. And then that way we can make better assessment on, well, if 2026 is even feasible for them, right? Because at this point, we're just kind of assuming. So if I may, members, as suggested by Senator Carl and Selena, if we could maybe table this for now and invite DPL in for further clarification on what their needs are and the timelines, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So at least the 2 concerns that we'll bring up to DPL in preparation for the next visit would be, how long will it take to complete the current study that was due, and well, maybe we'll use that as a starting point, and then identify whether they need to request in future budgets during the year 3 or year 4 of right before when it's due. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, members. At the request of the author, we'll table this for our next committee meeting. This is something that we can iron out quickly and adopt if we get the answers that we needed from the secretary. Unfortunately, she stepped out already, and so I will try to ask if they can be available at our next committee meeting. Under old business, we have 2 bills. We have Senate Bill 2349 and 2316, which are similar in nature. One is the Senate bill is authored by the floor leader, and then the House bill authored by Manny Castro. Both are similar in nature, so we'll take a 5-minute recess to review it and see how we can marry the two, or use one of the legislation that we can pass out of committee. And so with that, we'll take a 5-minute recess. back to our meeting. Prior to going on recess, we're about to discuss Senate Bill 2349 to amend four CMCs to amend 4 CMC 4205 to establish a 90-day deadline to pay the daily penalty fees imposed on late filing of annual corporate reports and mandating automatic dissolution for the failing to file annual reports after the deadline and for other purposes. And then we also have House Bill 2316 to reduce startup costs for small businesses and to remove daily penalty fees imposed on late filing of annual reports and for other purposes. As I stated earlier, it's similar in nature as it affects one section of the registrar fees. And so, first up, any discussion on Senate Bill 2349? Recognize the author of the bill.
Thank you, Chair. So I think if we go to page 2, right, and then so we'll leave everything as is until we get to line 11. And we are gonna change the $50 penalty back to 25, which is the existing late fee right now. And then moving on to line 13, we are also proposing to change the 180 days to 90 days to stay consistent with the annual reports, and this affects the nonprofit. And then line 14, we are changing the $50 penalty back to 25, where it stands right now. And I think those were the only changes that we're proposing.
Would you like to motion those changes? Sure.
Yes, I would like to offer a motion to make the changes as stated earlier on lines 11, 13, and 14. So moved.
Second.
And sorry, are we still giving? So we're also changing the 180 days, or are we leaving that?
Yes, as suggested by Senator Babauta, I am okay and would like to offer the amendment to change it to 90 days from the 180 days.
Okay.
That
To be consistent with
Yes.
the earlier
Yes.
section. All right.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. There was a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? All right. All in favor of the motion for the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Back to the main motion. Senate Bill 2349 SD1. Any further discussion? Not yet. Any other discussion on the new draft? I recognize Senator Volta.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to state for the record, because we were on recess for quite some time discussing the bill and how to improve it. While I'm not in favor of granting any more grace period for businesses who fail to file their corporate documents on the same date every year, same deadline, March 1st. It has not changed in 20 years. I will, in the spirit of comity and cooperation, in order to accommodate trying times that businesses are facing now, willing to compromise with the proposed changes and approved, adopted by this committee that Senator Karina has made. I think, and I also will agree with the automatic dissolution of businesses who fail to file, their documents after the 90-day grace period. Certainly, they have every opportunity before the March 1st deadline pursuant to the statute to request for an extension. And if they fail to do that, we are then giving them another 90-day grace period to pay the penalty fees. So I am in agreement with the automatic dissolution of businesses who fail to do that. We've I think with this bill, we've made every accommodation for businesses who are facing challenges right now, as we all understand and know. It's very difficult right now for businesses. So we are making these accommodations and amending the law to, because we hear their needs. Thank you, Senator Manglonia, and I yield.
Any other discussion? If none, can I get a motion for adoption? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We now move down to new business. Members, we have two bills, Senate Bill 2308 and House Bill 2326, that both are in relation to the solid waste. Senate Bill 2308 proposes to change the expenditure authority from currently the DPW secretary to the district mayor, to the district department heads in concurrence with the mayor. House Bill 2326 proposes to increase the excess tax from the current 7% to 10%.
Point of order, Chairman. I'm not sure that we formally tabled House Bill 2316 HS1. I think we did it while we
Correct.
were in recess.
Thank you for that. There's no objections. We move back to House Bill 2316, and at this time, based on the discussion from the members, we'll table 2316 for now. And
No objection, so move.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Back to new business, Senate Bill 2308. With the understanding and the approval of the author for Senate Bill 2308, we are proposing, or the authors were okay to marry his bill with the House Bill 2326 to have one uniform bill. And so I believe, members, if you don't have a copy, we'll get one provided to you of the proposed amendment or substitute.
I don't have a copy. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I have it. Is it 2326? That'll be, yeah.
But it's we're gonna amend the 23 House Bill 2326.
So what's 2363?
No, 2363 is a separate bill. We'll take a short recess. We now rise back into our meeting. Up for discussion, we still have House Bill 23. Sorry, before we move down on the list, everyone okay with tabling Senate Bill 2308? Or should we just file this since it's being addressed already? Or let's just table it in case we have to go to on the next one. Yeah. Any objection to tabling Senate Bill 2308? No objection. Heard. We need to move down to House Bill 2326 to amend 4 CMC 1402G1 to allocate 10% of the excise tax to the solid waste management revolving fund. Discussion on the bill. Recognize Senator Mendiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask or add a draft version to this, an amendment to include some languages, and I'll go ahead and read this out under Section 2, line 8. I'd like for this to read out, provided that 15% of this tax shall be allocated to each of the first and second senatorial district. And then I wanted to go down further to expenditure authority and go ahead and define the expenditure authority pretty much to read out in concurrence with the mayor, each senatorial district with the resident department head should be the expenditure authority. So move.
Second.
Sorry, I think the expenditure authority is still with the Secretary of Department Works, with concurrence of the mayors, right? Not the resident department head.
But I'm trying to add that we leave the expenditure authority with the resident department head with the concurrence of the mayor for each senatorial district. Then, of course, the 70% shall be the Secretary of Department of Public Works for SIPA.
Thank you for that. Can you just clarify the language that I guess this would be new language?
Yep. So I just wanted to be make it a draft so we can just try and have this spelled out so that there's no confusion on the expending of these funds, so that we can ensure that the municipalities are actually in terms of solid waste. The resident department heads of each municipality should be the expenditure authority with the concurrence of the mayor.
Before
Thank you for that amendment. Recognize Senator
before
Villalta.
we adopt the amendments proposed by Senator Mendiola, can we check with council the original statute? Whether, because from what my understanding, the solid waste management revolving fund is a SIPAN account, and I agree with the municipalities that they should have some funds to execute their own plans for solid waste management, given that the needs are different on all three islands. But just to provide clarification whether we can remove the Secretary of the Department of Public Works without the amending the original statute language, if it contains that. Secondly, the issue with the amendments that Senator Dennis Mendiola is proposing is that the following page 2, his amendment or proposed amendment is to remove the Secretary of Public Works language with the concurrence of the respective municipal mayors, remove that language and just have the municipal mayors in consultation with the resident department heads of each municipality. However, continuing that sentence, it says for personnel and operations of the programs in all three senatorial districts. So Saipan is still included in that language unless we take it out. And that's why I'm asking the council to clarify the original statute, whether this revolving account, solid waste revolving account, actually is derived from a Saipan only revolving account for solid waste management. Just seeking clarification on that.
Under Public Law 1342, that's all the fees that's collected in Saipan, tipping fees and whatever other fees they're collecting. That goes into the solid waste revolving account, and it's strictly the expenditure authority is the Secretary of Public Works. The first and the second senatorial districts get 10% of that, and still the expenditure authority is the Secretary of Public Works. With this one, if we want this 10%, we can keep the language that the expenditure authority shall be the Secretary of the Department, provided that 15% of this tax shall go to and we can language that the expenditure authority can be the mayor, the respective mayor, and concurrence with the resident director or whatever. But I think we should say deposit into solid waste revolving management fund to be expended by the Secretary of Department of Public Works, period, provided that 15% of this tax shall be allocated to each of the first, the second senatorial district sub accounts under the expenditure authority of the mayor with we wanted concurrence in consultation with the resident department heads. Yeah, I think we just relanguage it a little.
Sorry, so is it in concurrence and consultation with the resident department heads, or the resident department heads will be the expenditure authority?
So the expenditure authority should be the department head with, of course, the concurrence of the municipal mayors.
Okay, except for I don't think Saipan should be. Yeah, because I think the proposal is all three senatorial districts, but it only should be the first and second.
Yeah, the three senate doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think the flexibility of the usage of the additional funds is being asked by all three to include personnel and operations.
All three. What do you mean? Sorry.
So because I know you had asked why is that included if we're talking about only Tinian and Rhoda. So that specific fund, right, is not going to be held on only to operations. It'll be personnel on operations to cover down whatever they need.
Right.
So if I understand it from Senator Neighbors, all three islands are requesting flexibility to also hire personnel, not just keep this revolving fund for operations. And that's why that language, subsequent language clause is there.
Okay.
But however, the council is proposing that the solid waste revolving account pursuant to Public Law 13-42 shall still be the Secretary of Public Works. However, 15% of that shall go to the municipal districts with the resident department head, the expenditure authority in consultation and concurrence with their respective mayors.
Yes. So then we'll just have to further amend Senator Dennis's amendment to the, just to take out the all three senatorial districts. Right. Yeah. The mayor, the resident department head expenditure authority will only apply to the first and second senatorial district. So just to be clear again, from line 8 through 10, that language remains. Provided that 15% of this tax shall be allocated each to the first and second senatorial district sub-accounts to be expended by the. So we're changing that, right? To be expended by the resident department head.
Resident department head or resident directors? No.
Further specify that it is the Department of Public Works resident.
DPW. Let's just put DPW.
And not just any.
Okay.
So provided that 15% of this tax shall be allocated each to the first and second senatorial district sub-accounts to be expended by the resident director of the Department of Public Works, with the concurrence of the respective mayor for personnel and operations of the program. And then maybe, if I may propose, the following sentence after that would be the remaining taxes shall be expended by the Secretary of the Department of Public Works. Okay. And the remaining 70% of the taxes collected.
Oh.
Shall be expended by the Secretary of the Department of Public Works for personnel and operation of the program. Okay. Everyone okay? Everyone?
Yeah.
All right. Motion was made. Can I get a second? All right. There was a motion made and was seconded. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. House Bill 2326 SD1 is hereby adopted. We now move down to. No. Still one. Yeah, we tabled that already. How Senate Bill 2363. Members, I didn't get any comments, but I think this is pretty straightforward. Unless members would like to hear from certain. Recognize Senator King Neighbor.
So I'm looking over and I apologize if I'm not understanding part of the proposed legislation, but I agree with the terms of the repayment for services, but there have been issues with like the senatorials having to reappropriate funds depending on specific certification of funds that were provided. So, for example, this year, the second senatorial appropriated a certain amount of funds with a certification of funds that came from finance. It went through Ways and Means and it cleared everything. Then we appropriated in the delegation. It got kicked back because when it got to the governor's table, they said that the number wasn't the accurate number in the account, and so that caused 90-day delay in the whole process being redone, reintroduced in the House, going to the delegation, passing, waiting for the signature of the governor, and then the transfer of funds from the Secretary of Finance to the respective senatorial. So my question is, that issue for payment wasn't necessarily a function of the delegation or failure on our part to pay for the vendors from whatever events. So how would that be affected through this legislation, being that through no fault of the senatorial district, it delayed payment beyond 30 days?
I'm thinking because my only concern is that this would obviously be towards PO'd, anything that is PO'd, right? Because otherwise, several businesses have moved into the pay up front before services are performed. But I mean, you bring up a valid concern, Senator King. Neighbors, I guess it's just something for the committee to determine how we can address that. Senator Bata, did you have anything you want to add?
Yes, I think the 30-day requirement to pay out is too short given the processing time it takes. I do share Senator Neighbors' concern that vendors are not being paid on time, and I do agree with him that, or disagree that finance should wait 3, 4, 5 months to sometimes a year to get a vendor paid. That's just not acceptable practice. But if I may recommend that we table this until we get further comments from affected agencies, Secretary of Finance or Department of Finance, and perhaps we can improve upon this bill if we are to pass it. That's my recommendation. Sure.
Thank you. I think also based on experience, one of the challenges is the federal drawdown, which is where a lot of the payments are delayed. Federal drawdowns I've seen could take up to a month even. It all depends on the grantor and the way they process their payment, and the time difference could be a factor. But I think maybe in regards to like some of the concerns that Senator Carr brought up, I think it's a matter of once funding have been identified, then the 30-day clock should start. But obviously, finance won't allow for entities to enter anything until the money's there for the ones that require payment up front. But for the PO process, that one will take more than 30 days sometimes for federal contracts, for federal grants.
I also wanted to note, Chairman, that sometimes it's the vendor who actually doesn't submit the proper documents, and that could cause the delay too. And he's already provided this service to the government, and this bill does not address that. That if it's the vendor's fault, then they cannot penalize the government. So I think this bill can be worked on to improve it. I suggest we table it for now too.
All right, we'll get more comments. And so there are no objections. We'll table Senate Bill 2363. Now we move on to House Concurrent Resolution 23-3 HS1. It's the last one. we're just approving the ceiling. We're not gonna do any allocations or anything like that. Once we approve the ceiling, then we have a ceiling to go off of on the budget bill on Friday. No, we're not doing the budget. This is just no. It's just the ceiling. Let's establish a ceiling and then we'll work on the budget allocation. We'll take a short recess, not a lunch recess. We now rise back into our committee meeting. And just to go over again what was discussed earlier, based on the House concurrent resolution and the understanding that the House increased DPL's revenue by $1 million, but then washed it out by giving it to MPOT. This $1 million came about from a settlement between DPL and one of an investor that was looking into one of the DPL properties. And so this 1 million is not revenue that was identified by DPL. It's an outside source, and so we do have separate legislation that will address that 1 million, and it will be up to the committee to determine how to allocate that. So we'll take that 1 million back out, which will leave DPL's projected revenue to go down to $5,566,075. I understand that the vice chair will be introducing an amendment. And so at this time, I recognize the vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I would like to offer a motion to reduce the total ceiling by 1 million, which is appropriated to
Correction, vice chair, not the total ceiling, just
Oh.
DPL's budget.
or the DPL's budget. So reduce DPL's budget by 1 million and dollar fund them. And then dollar fund them because in our budget hearing with DPL earlier this year, we identified, or it was reported to us that there was cash, or there's already cash in reserved account for FY25. Additionally, that the actual cash that's in the reserve account was reflected on DPL's unaudited financial statement. So with that, members, I move. Thank you.
All right, a motion was
Second.
made and it was seconded. And just to clarify, the totals on page 3, from lines 3 to 14 remains unchanged. Line 18, the total revenue and resources available remains unchanged. Line 19, Part B, Department of Public Lands, it'll now read $1. And line 20 to MPOT will now read $5,566,074. Line 21 will read DPO total $1. Line 22 grand total will remain unchanged. At this time, can I recognize the vice chair to also to include in her motion the language on the whereas to commensurate the changes made.
Short recess, please.
Short recess. Rise back from recess, and I recognize the vice chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to page 2 of the concurrent resolution, and starting on line 8, whereas the legislature finds that DPO has submitted its fiscal year 2025 budget for operation expenses in the amount of $5,566,075. This operational budget will now be in the amount of $1, correct? $1. And the reason being, again, is because DPL has identified and reported to the Senate Committee on Fiscal Affairs that there is that $5.5 million sitting in their reserve account, which is budgeted for FY 2025. Next, accordingly, the grand total amount, which combines the total local revenues and resources available for appropriation for the CNMI government activities in fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $100 million, $474,011. In addition, DPL's budget in the amount of $1 will remain unchanged at $117,040,086. So moved.
Thank you, Chair. And again, the entire language will commensurate the changes made to the page 3, lines 19 through 21. Any further discussion on the motion? For this, since it's kind of a significant change, can I recognize Jolyn to take roll?
Senator Selena Arbolado.
Yes.
Senator Cara Neighbors.
Yes.
Senator Karina El Nagofia.
Yes.
Senator Paul A. Mangonia. Senator Dennis C. Mendiola.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 5 members voted yes, 1 member is absent.
Thank you, Jolyn. With 5 members voting yes, the amendment here is hereby adopted. We're back to the main motion. Any further discussion on anything else on the resolution? If there's none, can I get a motion for the adoption of House Concurrent Resolution 23-3 HS1 SD1?
Second.
All right, motion is made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The House Concurrent Resolution 23-3 HS1 SD1 is hereby adopted. Members, moving down on the agenda, we have miscellaneous. And so just a short announcement. Tomorrow we will have an informal meeting to discuss the allocations. And then on Friday, it's already on the agenda. We have the budget bill on there. I just set it on there just so that if in the event we are done with our the committee work on the budget bill, we can act on that on Friday's meeting. Otherwise, we can always push that back. But just to meet certain timelines, I went ahead and scheduled that meeting just in case we have a finished product. Friday at 10 a.m. Yeah, at the yeah, it was agreed that the REDP will reschedule theirs to Monday. So thank you, Chair, for that. Other than that, if I can just get you guys another 2 minutes after the committee meeting just to go over briefly what are some of the discussions that we have in preparation for tomorrow's informal meeting. With that, we now move down to adjournment. Can I get a motion for adjournment? All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 12:53 p.m.